prior to Databox, it was that data performance was inconsistent. Took a ton of time to develop, and in a lot of cases, it was very hacked together. So we were using Google Sheets, Keynote presentation, different types of PowerPoint decks. There was no consistency across accounts. And then what was reporting and how it was being reported was largely different by account team. And then the analyzing the data and producing kind of those reports was a huge time suck.
Keith, welcome to the Agency Spotlight series. First of all, how's everything going for you? I know there was a Browns win over the weekend, so that must be good.
Yes, yeah, it's for the first time or the second time in 650 days. We're smiling on Monday, so it's can't complain here.
Right. All right. And so just to get started, could you just tell us a little bit about PR 2020, like the size of the agency? How many people, how many clients, what your typical services that you offer are, and then we can jump in from there.
Sure. So PR 2020 is an inbound marketing, content marketing agency. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio. We've got, I think it's 16 or 17 employees, a couple dozen clients, ranging in kind of all different industries, but with a larger focus on manufacturing. And then the types of services we provide, usually they're integrated content campaigns. So building up a content asset and doing a lot of the promotion around it, working with them to define what we're trying to achieve as a business, and then as a marketing department, and then putting kind of the campaigns in place to help them achieve that.
And then what's your role at PR 2020?
I am Vice President of Strategic Growth. So I oversee the sales side of the business, the technology we utilize both on the agency side and for clients, and then a lot of the performance reporting and working with clients on kind of developing the strategies to better activate and achieve those goals they're trying to hit.
All right, so you're basically the perfect one to talk to. What was life like before you started using Databox?
So, before Databox, life was, especially because we position ourselves as a performance-driven agency. So like every month, we're delivering monthly scorecards. We're trying to analyze what the data is telling us. And prior to Databox, it was that data performance was inconsistent. Took a ton of time to develop, and in a lot of cases, it was very hacked together. So we were using Google Sheets, Keynote presentation, different types of PowerPoint decks. There was no consistency across accounts. And then what was reporting and how it was being reported was largely different by account team. And then the analyzing the data and producing kind of those reports was a huge time suck. We didn't have the systems in place to efficiently produce those reports. And then from a kind of like a management team perspective, we had very limited visibility into the account performance and where account teams were winning, where teams weren't hitting the goals they needed to hit, and then so we could more strategically step in and offer some guidance and some senior level support if necessary.
And how has that changed since? Like you talked a little bit about communication with account managers. You talked about like all the time that was spent on manually gathering data. How has that picture changed?
So we as an agency have always emphasized using data to guide strategy. So in our world, data is intelligence. You take that intelligence and you put it into action, and that action hopefully becomes outcomes. And then a month to month basis, we're reviewing the data, we're assessing performance overall, and evolving strategies as needed. So with Databox, the whole process became that much more easy to manage. It was less than time intensive to put together those reports and create those visualizations. It allowed us to more effectively communicate the data that we were seeing with the client. So we expanded what we were able to report on. We consolidated everything from a number of different reporting interfaces into one. We cut down on the time it actually takes to create those reports and deliver those to clients. In some cases, we weren't delivering performance scorecards on a month-to-month basis until the 15th of the month. And at that point, it's way too late to really be doing anything with that. Now we've cut it down to like 5 days after the start of the month. Um, we've given everybody greater visibility into the performance of the clients and the accounts and the campaign. So the account teams can easily see what's going on. The clients have real-time visibility into all of it, creates a level of transparency and some accountability on our end. And then kind of the senior level, the management level can check in it whenever they need to see how things are going. And I think my favorite part is it's actually created some consistency, some really good looking consistency across the account and kind of how things are being done. We're not reinventing the wheel with every new client that comes in.
You talked before about weekly reporting. Like most of the agencies I talked to were not doing any weekly reporting before Databox because it was just too time intensive. They would go with the mystery angle, which is we'll wait until the end of the month and then see how the data turned out. So what were you guys reporting on a weekly basis before using Databox? Was it just like a summary of the main numbers, or were people spending like hours putting together reports even before that?
No, so with us, when I meant weekly reporting, it's like internally, we're just kind of getting a gauge on what's going on. We're not delivering like full scorecards to clients week to week, largely because the types of campaigns we run, they take some time to develop and to launch and to actually grab some legs. So the monthly reporting is what's delivered to clients, and then we have weekly calls with the client, and we'll touch on as part of the agenda some of the performance metrics and the numbers that we're seeing, and just kind of keep them up to date.
Sounds good. How early do people know about this in the time that they're working with PR 2020? Does this come up in the sales process? Does it come up after you like start the first campaign? Like how early do they know that you guys are going to be a really data-driven agency?
So that's ingrained in the like right on our homepage. That's the first thing you see: performance-driven agency. So if we're talking with a client, the first conversation we're having as part of the business development process is we're talking about what they're trying to achieve, their goals. So and we'll dive into a little bit on the kind of what they've done to date and the success they've seen. And then from there, after we have a general sense of where they're looking to go, we'll take a step back and ask them to give us access like Google Analytics, HubSpot, any of the other tracking and reporting tools that they're using. And we want to see kind of what the numbers say. And in a lot of cases, there's some data cleanup that needs to happen. So internal traffic being filtered out, bot filters being turned on. Like we work with a number of tech companies, and like they often have login buttons at the very top. So anybody who's coming to the site and clicking on that login button probably isn't a marketing prospect for you. So we need to do some way to kind of get them out of the picture too. And once we do that, we can come back to them and like, here's the realistic look at the numbers you're seeing. And here's where we think we can go with it. And then as part of that business development process, we ask them to go through our marketing score assessment. And essentially, it's a series of questions across 10 core areas of the business. But it helps us get a sense of where they're at from a marketing perspective. And then what, if any, foundation item or actions need to be taken and put in place to develop the platform that we can launch the campaign on. So then from that, we're having a much more strategic and real conversation about kind of where you're at, what you're looking to achieve this, but here's what it may not be feasible. And so before we sign any sort of contract, we generally have a sense and we're in agreement on what their goals are, what the expectations are. I'd say probably 50 to 60% of clients have some sort of measurable goal in place when we have that kickoff. And then those that don't often require some level of foundation work to get that platform in place, to shore that foundation up, and then or they need help instituting and installing the tracking and performance technology to get that measure in place. In the case where there is no benchmark data, we actually will hold off on setting any sort of client goals until that we have some sort of benchmark data to base that off of. Essentially, we don't want to set ourselves up to fail based on client expectations and what may or may not be realistic.
When clients start working with you, is this the first time that they're using measurable goals, or have they already been using like a SMART goal framework internally to set goals?
It's definitely a mix. So some have measurable goals that they're looking to achieve. They can state those right up front. In most cases, though, they don't have anything formally defined, and we're helping them to define that. So, and what we'll often do is, as part of the initial conversation, is okay. In 12 months, how are you going to evaluate our performance and our partnership? And from that question, we can kind of work them towards and help them define what that metric needs to be. And then we're showcasing that metric throughout the entire partnership, whether that's traffic, qualified traffic, marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, subscribers in some cases. It really depends. But that question usually prompts that response. So we can figure that out pretty quick.
And then how do you like build the confidence internally to know that you're going to be able to hit the goal that you set out with them? Is it like the benchmarks like you were talking about? You'll just look at an industry benchmark and say, yeah, we can probably get to that, or is there another way that you feel some internal guarantee that you'll be able to get there?
So if we're defining goals for the client, we probably have an overall marketing goal of what we're trying to achieve for the next quarter and what we can realistically do. But as soon as a client comes on, and we also offer this as kind of a one-off service, but we host we call a marketing growth hackathon. So essentially, it's our strategic planning model, and it's an interactive planning session where we bring together key stakeholders like marketing, sales, customer service, kind of the C-level leadership, to solve a specific growth challenge. So we're trying to establish a model that we can plan fast, we can experiment more efficiently, and adapt consistently to accelerate success. So as part of that process, and these things are usually like they can last from an hour, and we've had them last almost a full day workshops. And they're great because you start off the hackathon by defining one SMART goal. Like, what is the one thing we're trying to achieve? We really emphasize the fact that it's got to be specific, it's got to be measurable, it's got to be attainable, it's got to be actually relevant to the overall business goals, and then there's got to be some sort of time element to it. Typically, it's between 1 and 2 quarters, like 90 days. Hopefully, we can effectively evaluate whether or not what we're done in the hackathon has achieved that goal, and then. From there, we'll take a look at kind of what assets they've got in place, milestones coming up, who are we looking to target and persona-wise, what audiences can we tap into, like email databases, social reach, all that. And then what's nice is that whole process, it probably takes about an hour or two to get through that whole process as a team and as a group. But at that point, everyone's got a very nice focus on what we're here to achieve and what we're looking to do. And then from there, the group starts brainstorming activities. Depending on the size, we may break it up so it's smaller groups collaborating. But at that point, everyone's bought into the process. And usually before we get through the entire thing, everyone's starting to throw idea. Well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And so we're starting to log all those. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to get out of this hackathon is a minimum of 3 ideas that we can activate in the next 30 days and then execute in the next 90. But the 3 is often usually a really low number because we've had some where we've walked away from a client's hackathon with 50 to 60 campaign ideas. And then what we'll do is we'll take those ideas and then rate them based on our ability to execute. Do we have the time? Do we have the talent? Do we have the budget? And do we have the technology to effectively execute on that campaign? And then if we were to effectively execute it and put it and nail it, what kind of impact does that realistically have on that SMART goal that we set? And as you start rating those on a scale of 1 to 5, every campaign gets those 2 ratings. The ones that are going to give us the biggest bang of the buck and that are easiest to execute start to rise to the surface. So then, and what's nice is now we've got essentially a game plan for the next 30 days minimum, but often for the next 6 to 9 months of here's all the campaigns that we can execute on. And everybody who is in that group is bought into the process. They all know how those ideas came up. So getting buy-in from leadership or from sales and all that, everyone's kind of cohesively agreed that this is the best route forward. And now we're off and running.
Nice. That sounds great. And then, so you just covered like the campaign side of things. So like the specific actions that you're going to take throughout potentially, planned all the way out to 6 months into the future.
Yeah.
How do you continue to communicate the progress towards those goals that you set with the clients?
Sure. So that's where the scorecards and that's where Databox really comes in to play. So every month we'll deliver a monthly scorecard to the client. And this is where we used to do it in Keynote. We used to do it in Google Sheets. This is where it was archaic and chaotic. But so every month we'll deliver a scorecard, and that scorecard includes kind of the high-level metrics on overall traffic, blog performance, and then we'll report on the campaigns we're running. And as part of that, we'll also deliver kind of a written assessment that essentially tells the stories that the numbers in the dashboard are showing, offers some context, and the context usually comes in like, okay, we published this blog post on this date and shared it here on LinkedIn and actually sent an email about it on this date, and there was a huge spike in traffic. So that's where like the Databox annotations really come in handy, so we can start painting that picture, and it takes less time for us to go back and fill in those details. And then as part of that assessment, what we'll do is we'll call out some of the specific recommendations that the data is essentially telling us. So for example, we've set a goal of this. The data is telling us we're not on pace. We did this email blast last month that really pushed the needle forward. Let's do another similar segmented email targeted blast specifically to this audience because we know they tend to engage better, that kind of thing. So we're using the data to inform the recommendations, and then we'll meet with the client and kind of explain and talk through the scorecard. So here's all the data, and they can easily see what's going on. We walk through the assessment and our recommendations, and then from that, as a group, we'll agree on whether or not to evolve that month's game plan accordingly based on the recommendations and the data that we're seeing.
Got it. And how often do you discuss that data internally over the course of the month? Is it just the account manager's job to like monitor it and then report at the end of the month, or are there weekly meetings? Like, what's your internal structure for looking at that?
Yeah, so usually the account teams are structured, so there's account manager and then there's support. And usually the support, the way that we've set it up is that the support team essentially owns a project or a campaign. And then, so they're in charge of making sure that it really hits the mark. And so they're hopefully looking at the data and reporting back to the account manager. The account team's discussing internally where needed. They bring in senior level support to offer some additional context or ideas. And we may even hold little mini hackathons internally to kind of just brainstorm a bunch of ideas. And then from that, the account manager is reporting, kind of keeping the client up to date on a week-to-week basis. And then we will do the full data dump on every month. So,
got it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. All right, I think that's all I've got for now, Keith. But I really appreciate your time. It sounds like you guys are making some interesting adjustments there with the gas gauge. The gas gauge is what we call it. Representation of data. So. Yeah, excited to see what you guys come up with in the future. You're one of our more technical agencies, so we're happy to have you.
Well, I very much appreciate the opportunity. This was fun.
All right. See you later, Keith.
All right, thanks.